Hey Brainiacs, how you guys doing today? I am at Cam's Brain, and I would like to thank you for tuning in to another episode of My Humble Opinion. Today we are going to be talking about the 48 Laws of Power. As always, if you've been following along, we take one law of power from the book The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. We take one parable each week, Sunday, at 8 p.m. and we break that down. Today is no exception. We will be talking about the 9th law of power. Win through your actions and never through your arguments. Arguing your point rarely changes anyone's mind. Even when you appear to win, you lose because you stir up resentment. A far better way of getting others to agree with you is to demonstrate your point without saying anything. So, I think this is a good parable. I also feel like I don't have to start off by saying that the 48 Laws of Power is about manipulation. This here, in my opinion, has nothing to do with manipulation. Jay-Z has a quote, or he has a verse, and he says, "Never argue with fools, because from a distance, people can't tell who is who." To me, it's the same thing. My dad used to always say, it's better to keep your mouth shut and people think you're a fool than to open your mouth and they erase all doubt. So I think a lot of these sayings kind of tie into the same thing. Sometimes when you put yourself in a position where you are trying to push your opinion on somebody, or you're trying to push your agenda, or you're trying to push your way of doing something on somebody, sometimes, most of the time, people may get offended for a lot of different reasons. It could be that this person is set in their ways. It could be that they feel like, hey, I already know what I'm doing here, or they may feel like you think you're better than them, so on and so forth. So the bigger thing to remember, especially if you're trying to show somebody a different way, is leading by example is everything. A lot of times, you know, how I kind of always break this down into a spiritual situation, into a business situation, and into like a personal relationship situation. If you're in a relationship, right, and you want to get somebody to do something that may benefit them or may benefit the relationship, a lot of times leading by example is key, especially in a friendship or in a relationship with a significant other. If you're able to kind of show somebody how you want to be treated by treating them that way, more often than none, they're going to come back at you with that same energy. And in business, same situation. Sometimes you don't necessarily have to kind of push what you want on somebody or push your agenda on somebody. The way you move, the way you conduct your business, the way sometimes you even choose to speak can be a good way or a good indication for somebody to realize what type of business partner you would be, what type of business owner you are, and so on and so forth. Now, spiritually, same thing. A lot of times, if you are able to just sit back, relax, and listen, you'll hear, you know, from whoever or whatever you believe in. Sometimes always asking for something, whether you're asking God, whether you're asking Allah, whoever you believe in, when you continuously ask, aside from being able to show the action that you may be deserving of what you may want, that's when things are a little bit better. Sometimes if you're peaceful and you're calm and you understand, instead of asking for money, or instead of asking for favor, instead of asking for a car, asking for a job, so on and so forth, the more and more you're working towards that, spiritually, it may come to you because of the efforts that you have behind showing an example of what you're working towards. So I think this is a really good parable. I think it's a really good law of power to abide by. And again, I don't think it has any negative connotation to it. Just went through your actions. Say less, do more. Undersell, over deliver. There's tons of different ways that this can be broken down and dissected. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is to focus on what's going to allow you to be the best version of yourself. If I have to think about how this translates to something that I've went through personally when I essentially had to went through my actions, I think in parenting, right? Like at the end of the day, everybody makes mistakes, you know, adults, young adults, mothers and fathers, so on and so forth. And I think there's been a lot of instances where I may want my kids to do something, and I've realized instead of telling them to do it, if I just lead by example, then eventually their behaviors will change. Like for instance, if I used to cuss a lot, right? Not necessarily at them, but around them, so on and so forth. And I realized, you know, I'm like, hey, I'm an adult, you're a kid, you shouldn't do this, right? But at the end of the day, they're observing me do this. So even if I tell them not to do it, what happens is because I'm doing it, they're seeing it and it's normal for them, right? So instead of me still doing it and saying, hey, you shouldn't do it because you're not an adult, if I cut that out of my behavior, more often than none, because they're viewing a lot of the things that I do, they'll stop. And that's what ends up happening, or what ended up happening in my situation. In a business situation, I think a lot of times I find that the more I am, I undersell and I over deliver, I get more respect from a customer. Sometimes people that are self-employed or that have business, they get burned out because they don't feel appreciated for what they do. But quite honestly, that's not always your customer's fault. Like sometimes the customer doesn't realize that you're just a one-man show and you're doing a ton of different things. One way I've figured out how to utilize this passage in what I'm doing is simply by underselling what I'm capable of. That way, when I do something a little bit better, a little bit greater, I'm appreciated more. So for instance, if I tell somebody, hey, you know, if I'm doing a photo shoot, I'm a photographer by trade, and I tell somebody I'm gonna be there at 10 a.m., usually what I'll do is make sure that I'm there at 9 a.m. And the fact that that person sees me going above and beyond, I get so much more of a sense of gratification from that customer because of my effort to try to do a little bit better, a little bit more. But I didn't have to say anything. All I had to do was show action of caring. All I had to do was show action of giving just a little bit more than what they were expecting. So yeah, it's a really good parable. It's a really good law of power to go by, to be aware of. And also in reverse, when you see people that do this, in my opinion, those are the people that you want to deal with. If you see a person in the room that's saying less but doing more, that's the person to talk to. That's the person to do business with. The person that's talking a lot, throwing their business card at you, shoving down their agenda down your throat while they're talking to you, letting you know all about them by talking, that may be the person that you may want to not necessarily deal with. But somebody that's going to say less, that is very observant, that you can see has more action in what it is they're doing, and you can literally tell what they're doing by their actions opposed to them talking, that's the person to deal with in all facets, spiritually, mentally, business, so on and so forth. But yeah, I want you guys to leave your comments down below and let me know how you feel about this situation, how you feel about this passage. If you use it, if you agree with it, if you don't agree with it, what situations have you been a part of where you've been able to use this and then it implement in such a positive way, right? Or if it didn't work for you, leave that down in the comments below and let's get involved. Let's have a conversation. I want to remind you guys to like, comment, and subscribe. I am at Cam's Brain. Thank you for tuning into my humble opinion. I'll see you next time. Peace.